In the wake of Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer's dramatic announcement to abolish NHS England, the political landscape of the United Kingdom is being irrevocably altered. For decades, the National Health Service, NHS, has been the cornerstone of Britain's welfare state, a symbol of social justice that guarantees healthcare access for all. But now, in a sweeping act of reform, Starmer has made a bold decision that could reshape the future of the NHS and possibly the future of the country itself. As he disassembles NHS England, questions of whether this is an act of saviour or sacrilege hang in the air. However, one thing is clear. This overhaul is the only rational step forward if we are to confront the inefficiencies, bureaucracy, and stagnation that have plagued the NHS for far too long. The sheer scale of the NHS England bureaucracy, bloated and mired in inefficiency, has created a system incapable of delivering timely, high-quality care to those who need it most. From interminable waiting times to a workforce that, though hard-working, is undermined by layers of administrative red tape, the evidence is undeniable. NHS England is broken. Starmer's decision to abolish it is not a betrayal of the NHS but rather an act of survival. The service, once the envy of the world, has slowly descended into a behemoth that consumes vast amounts of public money with little to show for it. The promise of the NHS, that healthcare will be free at the point of delivery, has been increasingly compromised by the inefficiencies of NHS England. For all the good it once represented, the body has failed to adapt, failed to streamline, and ultimately failed to meet the needs of modern Britain. It is not enough to simply blame previous governments for the NHS's shortcomings. Yes, the Tories underfunded and mismanaged it, but they didn't create this mess alone. NHS England's labyrinthine structure, built over the years to oversee a multitude of disparate organisations, has become its own undoing. The duplication of roles within the system, the vast network of administrators who do little more than shuffle papers, has proven a monumental drain on resources. The fact that a communications team exists within both NHS England and the Department of Health, both tasked with the same objective, exemplifies the absurdity of the situation. Resources that should be allocated to frontline care have been squandered on inefficiency. Starmer is not just cutting through red tape, he is cutting through the heart of an institution that has failed its people. Opponents of Starmer's plan will inevitably scream about the sanctity of the NHS and the dangers of political interference in healthcare. But to them, I say this, the NHS as we know it has already been eroded beyond recognition. The administration of healthcare in England is a far cry from the egalitarian vision that Aneurin and Bevan championed. The health system is in crisis, and unless we make bold, sometimes painful decisions, it will collapse under its own weight. Abolishing NHS England and taking the reins back under direct government control is not a radical step, it is a necessary one. Starmer is not dismantling the NHS but reviving it, rooting out inefficiency, and redirecting resources to where they are most needed, the doctors, nurses, and healthcare professionals who are on the ground, treating patients. The government's move to eliminate thousands of roles within NHS England, particularly in the administrative and managerial sectors, may seem like a harsh measure. Yet, it is essential to recognize the reality of the situation. The thousands of staff working in these roles, many of whom are undoubtedly talented and dedicated, represent a redundant layer in an already overstretched system. The funds freed from these redundancies will not be pocketed by the government but redirected to healthcare services, ensuring that patients receive the care they deserve, when they need it. For too long, resources have been drained by an overabundance of middlemen and bureaucrats. Starmer's proposal will reduce that waste, ensuring that the NHS can return to focusing on what really matters, saving lives. The fact remains that healthcare services in England are in dire need of reform. Data from the Nuffield Trust shows that nearly half of patients fail to see a doctor within 48 hours of requesting an appointment, and waiting times in emergency departments continue to escalate to unbearable levels. With NHS England increasingly incapable of addressing these systemic issues, the situation demands action. Starmer's sweeping reforms may be unsettling for many, but they are a direct response to an institution that has long been bogged down by its own size, complexity, and inefficiency. The NHS must evolve to meet the demands of the 21st century, and the current structure is incompatible with that vision. Critics will argue that this move threatens the core values of the NHS, that it will pave the way for privatization or lead to the dismantling of public healthcare. These fears are misplaced and based on a misunderstanding of the proposal. Starmer has made it abundantly clear that the NHS, in its fundamental form, will remain intact. It is NHS England, the management and administration of the service, that is being restructured. The essence of the NHS, the principle that healthcare will be free at the point of use, remains unchanged. What is being stripped away is a bloated, ineffective management system that has contributed to the NHS's decline. For too long, the NHS has been allowed to stagnate, its growth stunted by bureaucracy, inefficiency, and outdated practices. Starmer's bold decision is the catalyst needed to inject new life into the system. By abolishing NHS England, he is laying the foundation for a stronger, leaner, and more effective healthcare system. This is not the end of the NHS, but the beginning of a new era, a chance to restore the service to its former glory and ensure it is equipped to face the challenges of the future. It's time to stop clinging to a failing system and embrace the change that will safeguard the NHS for generations to come. The question now is not whether Starmer's plan will succeed, it's whether we, as a nation, are ready to support the brave changes necessary for its survival.